Hi, I'm Ralph Preston. I'm here again with William Low, and we're doing another roadmap segment. And tonight we're going to talk about something that is an issue for all stroke survivors as they gain mobility, and that is the stairs, going up and down the stairs, how to deal with the stairs safely. So, William, I know when we were talking a few minutes ago, you had a couple of points on this. So why don't you start us off as usual?
Yeah, sure thing. So I think when it comes to recovery after stroke, and especially when it comes to teaching your brain how to get back to walking, learning the ability to walk up and down stairs, it's actually one of the most important and most effective exercises in recovery after stroke. Because if you've seen Ralph and myself talk before on previous roadmaps, you might have recalled how in the past I I shared how, generally speaking, after stroke, the way that your brain distributes weight between both legs, it it changes compared to how you used to do it before you had your stroke. So generally speaking, before someone has a stroke, both legs would generally take on 50% of the body weight of your body weight. Now, in recovery after stroke, what we tend to see is the brain likes to do things the easy way and likes to find shortcuts. So it finds that it's able to get by with walking by relying mainly more on the non-affected leg to bear most of the weight of the body. And so what we get in stroke recovery is we get this weight imbalance where we have the non-affected leg or the stronger leg taking on 80% of your body weight, and the affected leg maybe taking on 20% or 30% of your body weight. And so, especially in recovery after stroke, if you're serious about returning back to walking and getting more into rhythm whenever you're walking, and I guess improving your walking gait, then one of the things you could do to start is by doing exercises where you're reteaching your brain how to distribute the weight of your body equally across both legs. And stairs, for one, is one of the many exercises which you can do to actually encourage your brain and really police your brain to move towards that direction of how you used to walk before your stroke, and how, most importantly, your brain used to distribute weight across both sides of your body before your stroke. So when it comes to walking up and down stairs, how this works is it really comes down to which leg you're leading with whenever you're going up and whenever you're going downstairs. So generally speaking, the first leg which you use whenever you're going up or downstairs is going to be the leg is going to be the leg which is going to be taking on most of the weight. When you're going upstairs, if you're leading with your non-affected leg, as most of the stroke survivors would have been taught when they were in hospital, your non-affected leg will be taking on most of your body weight, because as you step up onto the step, the weight of your body is transitioning all onto your non-affected leg, and your body is using your non-affected leg to stabilize the weight of your body. Now, this differs to coming downstairs, where when you come downstairs, it's the foot which remains on the step which actually takes on most of your body weight. So when you're coming downstairs, if you are coming down with your affected leg first, your non-affected leg, which remains on the step, that one's the one which actually takes on most of the weight of your body. Now, obviously, as you can see here, there is a pattern to this, and if you want to train up your brain to distribute equal amounts of weight across both legs, it would be very wise to do exercises where you incorporate going up and down stairs, where you are deliberately policing your brain to encourage it to put more weight on one leg compared to the other. So, for example, if whenever you're walking and noticing that you're swaying more towards your non-affected side compared to your affected side, one thing you could do to actually reverse that pattern is for a period of time, encourage yourself to go upstairs with your affected leg first, rather than sticking to that pattern, which you might have been taught when you were in hospital where the physical therapist might have encouraged you to go upstairs with your non-affected leg. And the reason why they suggested this is because, one, it prevents the risk of falling, and number two, it also prevents a lot of setbacks in recovery after stroke because a lot of stroke survivors, they might not have the confidence to go upstairs with their affected leg, and by teaching your brain to go up with your non-affected leg, it is a compensation approach which gives your brain the opportunity to use the non-affected leg as a strong base to stabilize the body as you go up with your affected leg after. So as you can see from everything I've shared here, going upstairs is a pretty effective exercise in recovery after stroke, and it really comes down to the way that you do it and how you go up and down stairs in your recovery after stroke is going to determine how much benefit and how much recovery you're actually going to get back when it comes to your walking. So going upstairs, whichever leg you lead with first is the leg which, generally speaking, is going to be strengthened a lot more. And conversely, when you go downstairs, the leg which remains on the step is this leg which will be taking on most of the weight of your body. Now, obviously, there are many variations to how you would do this, but in a sense, all of these concepts which I've shared, they all come back to the idea of teaching your brain how to distribute weight equally across both legs. And like I said at the start of this roadmap, if you're serious about getting back to walking and improving your gait and the rhythm of your walking, it really starts from teaching your brain how to correct that imbalance of how your legs take on the weight of your body as your weight transitions from one leg to the other leg. Now, earlier, Ralph, before we started this roadmap, you and I, we were having a discussion about this, and we've had many discussions before about walking and going up and down stairs. Just after hearing everything I've shared right now, I was just wondering if you had any ideas which you want to share with all of the folks watching from your experience of going upstairs as a stroke survivor, as well as helping other stroke survivors.
Sure. One thing I want to talk about first is I want to go over a little bit more about the normal way. I mean, I understand that if you lead with your affected leg instead of your good leg, that you're causing more even weight distribution. However, that's not something that people can, some people can't do that like right out of the box. So I just want to make sure everybody understands if they're just starting out with going up or down steps, that the way they teach you, William, you mentioned a couple acronyms. I've heard them before. Going up is gas. That means you start with your good leg, putting your good leg up one step, then your affected leg, and then the S stands for your cane or stick. So that's the normal way of going up. The normal way of coming down would be the reverse of that, putting the stick down or cane down first, and then the affected leg. That leaves the unaffected leg up on the step, and like you said, it's doing most of the weight bearing. But people have to learn how to. I followed their directions, and I learned how to do it the way they said, which would be, gas going up and sag, stick affected, good leg coming down. My personal experience, I didn't know a whole lot about. I knew weight bearing was good. I didn't know anything much about getting even weight distribution, but I like the idea of being able to. Came from kind of thinking that you should be able to do things bilaterally or the same. So as soon as I got good at going up the steps the way they normally teach you, I started fooling around with leading with the affected leg going up and leading with the unaffected leg coming down, which should be considered backwards from the basic way of doing it. So I just want to make sure that anybody out there that hasn't been going up and down steps much at all, that's clear for them because they might do better following the standard method. But I completely agree with you about, things like you can use the steps as a type of exercise or therapy. They're like, you can do the monster walk. There are a number of things that you can do to try and get even weight bearing, and steps can definitely be used as one. Another issue for a lot of people is people want to have a handrail. In a house, some houses have handrails on both sides. A lot of times they don't. And whether you're left or right affected depends on whether that handrail hits you on your strong side on the way up or on the strong side on the way down. So if something's only got one handrail, they will therapists will teach you or tell you to stick with the handrail on your strong side. Let's say it's on the right and you're left affected. Then you would use the handrail with your right on the way up. Coming down, you'd come down the other side, but there's no railing. So you would back down, and I guess you would, it would be the same rules. Whatever leg you leave up on the step, you're going to be doing most of the weight bearing on. So if you have to come down backwards, you probably ought to be leading, coming down with your affected leg first and leaving that good leg up on the step, let it do all the weight bearing until you get it down. I've seen posts in the group where, people suggested, well, I just come down backwards, and people say, I'm terrified to come down backwards. I don't know how they quite get down the steps. I mean, at some point they've got to, they have to somehow get down the steps. Maybe a caregiver or partner or something helps them. But that's one strategy. You can back down the steps. So I'll toss it back to you, William. I got one or two other things to say. This isn't going to be like an hour-long talk because we're basically just covering this one thing. So what else have you got to add to this discussion on stairs?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to highlight what you said about backing down on the stairs. If you're in a situation where for whatever reason, let's say you're outside and there's no rail on the particular side which favors your strong side, then it just means that you have to, one suggestion I have to make is you can go down the stairs, but it just means that you might be in the way of people coming up the other direction.
Right.
That's the only thing I have to add. And that is a risk. And I know this isn't for all stroke survivors who are watching this. Generally speaking, for those stroke survivors who are early in their recovery after stroke, going downstairs or going upstairs where there's a lot of people and it's a pressured environment where people might put you off balance, that can be quite scary. But I'm just putting this suggestion out there because at the end of the day, safety is a priority, and if it's a lot safer for you to go downstairs knowing that you've got your strong side on a rail as a strong base to support you, I would encourage you to do that. And I would completely understand any stroke survivor who would feel reluctant going downstairs backward. Having said that, going downstairs backward, it is also quite an effective exercise because it is the reverse of what your brain usually would do, and going back and going downstairs backward, it actually strengthens up your affected leg a lot more because your affected leg, it actually has to support the weight of your body as you come back down. Now, granted, if you can hold on to a rail, that would also be good because it can help support you in case something goes wrong and you trip. but it's a good exercise nevertheless to do. And I think in the early days of your recovery after stroke, if you live in a house where you don't have rails or you don't have stairs, it would be worthwhile to get one of those fitness steppers and then position that stepper next to a next to maybe a kitchen bench, and then use the kitchen bench as a sort of support and act as a rail while you step up onto the step, as if it was just like a staircase which you would tackle outside. But I think overall, for all of the folks watching here, as you can see, stairs are actually quite effective. You can do them. You can apply the idea of going up and down stairs as a very versatile exercise to help you in your walking, so that you can develop a better rhythm and so that you can teach your brain how to weight bear a lot better. Another way I would suggest using stairs to actually strengthen up your walking is by just stepping up with your affected leg, and then trying to tap the edge of the step with your non-affected leg, and then quickly come down. And what that does is, because you're leading first with your affected leg, your affected leg is going to actually have to take on most of the weight of your body. And because you're putting your brain under pressure by tapping very quickly the edge of the step with your non-affected leg, taking into consideration that you're holding onto a rail for safety, then that can also be a very effective way to strengthen up the ability of your affected leg to take on the weight of your body. And as you can see here, going downstairs and going upstairs, whether you're doing this the normal way or backward, I think both variations, when they're done in controlled environments where it's safe, they can both be very effective for recovery after stroke, because not only is it teaching your brain how to distribute equal weight across both legs, but it's also teaching you that coordination factor, and it's forcing you to actually use a little bit of cognition when it comes to performing a motor task which you would have done before your stroke. And the research does show that when it comes to learning new skills, your brain does require a sort of mental or cognitive component to actually learn how to recover things a lot quicker and learn how to learn things a lot quicker after you've had a stroke. So that's pretty much everything else I have to add. And I know, Ralph, you mentioned that you had one or two more things to add. So I'll just toss it back to you.
Yeah, you just use the word backwards, and I don't want people to confuse. When you meant like leading with your affected leg instead of your strong leg. So the backwards in that case means backwards from the way they teach you to normally do it. You wouldn't back down the steps unless you wanted to keep the railing on your strong side. And it might be such if you have a house with only one rail where you have to go up the stairs backwards because you want to keep the rail on that side. But you mentioned something about, going up the wrong side in a lot of traffic. I would suggest that anybody learning to go up and down stairs not go anywhere near busy steps, because people tend to go up on the right and then they come down on the right. It's on the left if you're going up, and that works great if you're left affected. But if you're not, then you need to go up on the left and come down on the right, which is exactly backwards from the normal traffic pattern. So you don't want to be around a lot of people. And how can you practice where there aren't a lot of people? Where I did it in the medical buildings. When I went to doctor's appointments, I noticed that, well, I always walk up and down the steps, even, like I go to the medical university in Charleston, I'll be on the fifth floor of the parking garage and I'll walk all the way down the steps and I'll walk all the way back up. I figure, since my stroke, anytime that I'm not going to walk 80 floors in a high rise or something. But anytime I can take on some steps, I figured it was good, particularly in the early days, and I've just kind of stuck with it. So what I would do would be I noticed that when I went to physical therapy, for example, and it was on the third floor, and everybody takes the elevator in those medical buildings. You've been in them. Everybody's been in them. So the stairs are like sitting there empty, and they have railings on both sides. So that's a place that works really well for practicing because there's nobody in there, and no matter which side you're affected on, if you're left affected, one on the right, you go up the right and down on the with the railing on your right. The normal traffic pattern. If you're right affected and you want to have your left hand on, then you would go up the side that on the left where people are normally coming down, and you would come down the side where people are normally coming up. Also, I've noticed in my front steps, I've got like 4 or 5 steps up to the porch. My house sits up like a lot of houses do, it sits up just a little bit. And I've noticed that in some of the people I work with locally, they had the same sort of thing. You got 5 or 6 steps and you have railings on both sides. So, you just look for some place that has railings on both sides. I live at my house doesn't have stairs, so other than to come into it, it's a 1-story house. So, there isn't a flight of steps to the second floor. Even if there was, there's nothing that says you can't practice on the front steps on those 4 or 5 steps. You don't have to go up 100 steps. You can turn around and go up and down the 5 or 6 steps and get just as good a practice. So those are some things that I did to make it easy to find a safe place with railings on both sides and not a lot of people around, because I don't know about you, but in the early days, I didn't like people around me anywhere. I didn't like going to the mall. I didn't like walking in crowds. I didn't like people around at all. I particularly wouldn't like them on the steps. I did run into that a couple of times. But if you're in a medical building, you get one person here, one person there that decides to use the steps. So that worked real well for me. So that's about all I got. So William, unless you have anything else, or should we wrap this up?
I guess the main thing is, for all of the folks watching this, obviously you can see that Ralph and I here, we've shared a lot of ideas around how effective going up and down stairs can be in your recovery after stroke. And obviously when you are implementing this exercise in your recovery, to keep some really important points in mind. The first one is obviously how you're going up the stairs, and also how you're coming down the stairs. And number 2, being cognizant of how much weight you are putting through each leg. So, for example, I agree with what Ralph said about avoiding noisy areas. I think in the early stages of recovery, you definitely want some time to really focus and collect yourself. And it's much better to aim for quality over quantity in the early stages. And only once you've mastered them, once you've dialed in that signal, to actually go for quantity. So other than that, I don't really have anything else to add, Ralph. I hope that everyone can take everything that we've shared to heart and apply this to their recovery, just like Ralph and I have applied to ours as well.
But if you're in the early stages, just work on the basics of getting up and down. There are a lot of stroke survivors live in houses with steps, and the bedrooms are on the second floor, and they end up like sleeping in the living room for some number of months or I've known people that got hospital beds and stuck them downstairs because the survivor couldn't get upstairs. So if you're in that boat, the thing to do is get good at going up and down the steps before you worry about the regular way, leading with the strong going up and coming down. I mean, yeah, you lead with the good leg going up and the affected leg coming down. That leaves most of the weight bearing on your strong leg, and you'll before you go doing it as exercise to balance out your sides. It's important to a lot of people to get back upstairs so that they can sleep in their bed and that kind of thing, or negotiate a few steps on the way to in and out of a doctor's office or wherever you end up having to go. So my advice would be stick with the basics until you got them down, and then you can use the steps as a way to even out weight distribution like William was talking about. So with that, I guess we'll end it, and we'll see everybody again soon on the next roadmap. And thanks for tuning in, and thank you, William.
Thanks, Ralph.